Hey, how's it going? I hope you're doing well today. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess, and one thing about me is I am really bad at reading sequels. I really love starting a series, but even if I loved the first book, I have a hard time bringing myself back around to read any of the sequels. So in this vlog-ish challenge video, I'm going to be forcing myself to read a few sequels. And it's not like I'm holding myself at knife point to read these or anything like that, but I am going to be encouraging myself to read these sequels before I start picking up any other books. Because some of these have been on my shelf, on my TBR, for way too long. So it's kind of become this ever-worsening issue where I don't remember what happened in the book before it, so I keep putting off the sequel because I'm scared that I'm going to forget everything from the first book, but then by doing that, it creates more gap between the first and the second, or whatever, in the series. So all I'm doing is making it harder for myself by putting these off. And I thought I would create a video about it to kind of hold myself accountable and give myself a little bit of a incentive to read them because I want to put out a video about it. So I'm planning to read 4 books in this video. I'm going to introduce the books to you, and I'm going to try to explain the premise of the first book in the series so that I can still tell you about them, but I don't want to spoil like what happened. These are in no particular order, but the first book on this pile, I read the prior book most recently. So technically this is the newest sequel on my shelf, which means it is very fresh in my mind, so I really want to go into this one first, and that is Redemptor by Jordan Fueko. This is the sequel to Raybearer, and it is a duology. I really loved Raybearer. It was such a great book. It is YA, but it doesn't feel your stereotypical cliche YA writing. It has such rich world building and a very deep kind of political system that's being established. The magic system is interesting and unique, and there's this whole element in the first book that gets introduced about an other world or like a different realm, and I think this book is when they actually go into that realm, so I am really interested and curious to see what happens next in this series. I talked about the first book in this series relatively recently, so I will link a video in one of the cards where I talked about the first book in a lot more depth because I don't want to talk for like 15 minutes about the premise of this. This is the first book that I would like to get around to because, like I said, it is the most fresh. Next is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This is the second book in the Fallen Gods series. I believe it's a trilogy. Now this one I've had for a really long time. I read the first book, God Killer, over a year ago, probably over a year and a half ago. For me that feels like a long time, and I know that because when I started reading this, I only got maybe 15 pages in, and I was like, I fully do not remember basically anything from the first book. So after I had tried the first 15 whatever pages, I was apprehensive about trying it again, but my goal is to maybe find a summary of the first book online somewhere, and I can just refresh my knowledge about it before I get into this one. Basically, what I remember about the first book that I can actually tell you about is that it follows our main character, Kissen, who is a god killer. There's a young girl who has been orphaned in a horrible accident that killed her family, and she has a god attached to her, basically. They are bonded in some way, and because of that bond, Kissen cannot kill this god, even though she wants to, because it would probably kill the girl. There's also another character in this who is a knight who is joining Kissen and their squad. And so I think where the story started out was that they were all kind of going together and adventuring together to try to separate the god and the child, and I'm gonna have to brush up on it. I remember what happened at the end of God Killer a little bit because it was very like bombastic, but I don't remember enough to pick this up right off the bat, so I'm going to do some research, but I've had this on my shelf for so long, it needs to get read. The next book is part of a series that I started earlier this year, so it's still semi-fresh, and that is The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. It is book 2 in the Broken Earth trilogy. I read the first book, the 5th season, like I said earlier this year, and loved it. It was phenomenal. It just had one of the most unique narration styles and story construction that I've read in a long time. It had a really fascinating magic system and world building, and so with how much I loved the first book, I have really high hopes going into this one, but what I can tell you about it is it's basically a dystopian, I think it's post-apocalyptic future. In this world, natural disasters happen constantly. The earth is in a constant state of shattering, and so people are being killed and displaced and losing their homes constantly. And the magic system in this, I believe, is called orogeny, and it's based around harnessing the energy of the earth's destruction and utilizing it for magic purposes. And I think that that whole premise is so interesting. The magic is really much more unique than I'm describing, and the whole world building, the whole setup of this was so great. So I'm really excited for book 2. Like I said, because I read the first book fairly recently this year, which I'll link the video where I talked about it somewhere. But since I read it fairly recently, I'm hoping that I will remember everything. So if anything, I might try to do Redemptor and then this one, and then go from there. The last book on this list is A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This one is the second book in the Shadow of the Leviathan series, which starts with The Tainted Cup. And I really enjoyed The Tainted Cup. I don't remember what I gave it, maybe a 4, 4.5. But it was a very interesting twist on the typical murder investigation, Sherlock and Watson kind of story, because it's set in a sci-fi setting where our main character, who is one of the detectives involved in this murder mystery, has the ability to recall with perfect recollection anything he sees, hears, smells, etc. when he is on the scene of an investigation. It's basically like the magic system is built around modifications, and people's modifications tend to enhance or make them better at their jobs, I suppose. So I believe this book follows the same set of characters, or some of the same characters, in a different murder mystery, and probably a different location, I imagine. From what it sounds like, and from what people have said, these are kind of more like episodic style, so you don't really need to remember a ton of what happened in the first book. I imagine it's gonna help, but I think that where I was most concerned about picking this one up was on the world building and the political aspect of the first book. So if anything, I can always revisit my copy and go through the tabs, but I might just look up a summary somewhere. But it has been on my shelf for so long. I bought this copy. This is the UK hardcover, by the way. I bought this copy ages ago, and it's just been sitting here. So this is the last book in the planned TBR. All right, I've been yapping for ages, so it's time to wrap this up. So the next time I see you, I will come in with some update on probably Redemptor is the first book I'm going to read. I'll see you then. Hello, we are in my bathroom. I'm going to be doing my hair because I'm off today. So I wanted to do my hair and makeup and maybe film a little bit today. So that is why we are in here. And yes, I am wearing my Gideon the Ninth shirt yet again. I will not stop wearing it, and I will not be fielding any complaints about it at this time. I don't have too much to update. This will be a very quick little segment, but I wanted to tell you that I have started Redemptor. I started reading it last night, and I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm really glad that I didn't wait too long and put this off before reading the second book, because it's only been a couple months since I read the first one, and I can really tell because I remember a lot about the first book, and I'm not really having to do a lot of like catching up, but I'm glad that I at least started it, because I find that starting a book, like picking it up for the first time and getting through like the beginning part, is the hardest. The other update that I wanted to share is that I am removing something from the TBR for this video. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think that one of the books on the TBR just isn't really on the same level as some of the other ones in terms of my desire to read it. The first book in the series I didn't even love that much, and so I don't really feel compelled to continue the series. And so that book is Sunbringer. That's the sequel to Godkiller. I think Godkiller was fine. I think I gave it 3.5. I might have said that in the intro, but I'm not super compelled to go pick up Sunbringer. There's just not really anything compelling me to pick it up other than like self-shame about not finishing the series. So I'm going to be taking off Sunbringer, but I'm going to be adding a book in its place. It is A Dangerous Collaboration by Deanna Raybourn. It is one of the Veronica Speedwell books. It's book 4 in the series, but this series is very kind of like episodic in nature. I like that they're kind of their own like self-contained mysteries, their own self-contained plot. Plus, I don't think I read the third one that long ago. I read it a few months ago maybe. It was okay. I think book 1 was pretty good. Book 2 was my favorite so far, and then book 3 was kind of a letdown for me. But the premise of book 4 sounds really, really interesting. I don't remember what the premise really says, but it has something to do with going to this mysterious island. I think the blurb says a bride goes missing on her wedding day or something like that. So that'll be interesting. So I definitely feel more driven to read that one and to continue the Veronica Speedwell series in comparison to the Fallen Gods series. I know a lot of people really do love that series, and I've heard that the last one, Faithbreaker, is really good, but I don't know. I feel like I need to just listen to my gut on this. So yeah, that's the kind of update. I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm modifying the TBR a little bit. Sunbreaker is out, Dangerous Collaboration is in, Redemptor is started. So that's everything for now. I will chat with you guys when I have some actual reading progress on Redemptor and let you know how I'm feeling, and I will see you in the next one. Hi, it's been a few days. I have been on a reading kick, actually. I have been reading a lot. the last few days after my beginning of January reading slump. So it's kind of nice to be able to actually get a lot of reading done. So I have some reading updates on a couple books from this TBR. So let's start with Redemptor. You don't see the title, but this is my Illumicrate edition. I really love it, and I've been tabbing quite a bit. I'm probably like 60% through, and so far I'm actually really enjoying this one. And like I said in the last update, I'm feeling pretty good about reading this one now because it hasn't been that long since I read Raybearer, and because of that I feel like I had a good grip on where the plot was at the end of the last book and where we are in this one. So basically my feelings on this are I like it a lot, but I'm not sure I like it as much as the first book. No, I'm pretty sure I don't like it as much as the first book, but I do like it. Obviously, I can't really talk specifics on the story, on the plot, because that would spoil literally everything from book one, but I can talk about, I guess, my general feelings on the plot and my feelings about the cast. So plot-wise, I think that it definitely has more like action-packed, more fast-paced stuff going on than book one. I think book one was a lot of like setup because you had to go through Tarisai's like childhood and adolescence and her getting to meet all of the characters. This book, it's already all established. The pacing of the story and the setup of what's happening in this book is interesting, but there's a little bit maybe too much going on. There's one plot line that I could probably do without. Overall, though, I think that the story is going well. I like where it's going. There's a lot still to do in the last little bit of this book, and I know there's not a next book, so I'm gonna be interested to see how this wraps up. I'm thinking to myself, like, girl, there's not much time left for what has to happen in this book. So we'll see how it goes. And then as far as my feelings on the cast of characters, I am kind of confused by the direction that this book is taking, because in the first book we had a pretty large cast. There was a lot of characters, a lot of secondary characters. Only a few of them really got well established in book one. And then a couple other ones are getting more established now, maybe like one other character from that original cast. But a lot of the other characters from the original cast are just kind of off doing their own thing in this book, and they're not part of the story. Like, it's not even like we're getting separate POVs. They're just not here. I'm kind of missing them. I'm kind of missing the characters that we got to know so well in book one. I'm kind of baffled by the choice to establish this huge cast, focus specifically on a couple of those cast members, and then in this book have them basically all go off on their own. Especially like the way that they introduced this thing that's splitting up the cast. The only reason it feels like it's there is to take those characters kind of out of the picture and introduce a new set of characters. And the new set of characters, some of them are compelling. I think that if you wanted to introduce a couple of the new characters that are in this, which, like I said, I do like some of the new characters, you could have still introduced them. Especially like one of the characters that's kind of playing a really big part in like the middle of the book. I think that you could have introduced her anyway, and you could have had that whole storyline. Where is the sun going? It would have paid off a little better for me if we had more time with the characters from the first book that we already knew, and maybe establish on a couple of those characters that were not fleshed out enough, bring them into book two, really elaborate on them, explore those dynamics, and build on the existing relationships. I do like some of the characters that are in this, and I think that some of the new additions go really well with the cast we already had. Still, I think that it's probably sitting at like a 4-ish for me. There are some things that, like, the more I'm sitting with it, I'm kind of like, I don't love this book as much as the first one, unfortunately. But that's okay. I'm still getting a lot out of it. I'm still annotating quite a bit. There's still a lot of imagery in here that I love. There's a lot of themes being explored in here that I love. You know, kind of elaborating on the themes from the first book of like oppression, indoctrination, and things like that. I think that this one has more of a like social uprising kind of theme around it, where there's kind of a rebellion happening under the surface, where a lot of the common folk are really unhappy with how the empire was being run from the previous emperor and his council. Now that there's this like change in leadership, I suppose, in the second book, which I'm not going to elaborate on because again, spoiler. Now that there's like this change in leadership, it kind of created this vulnerable space for an uprising to happen. I think that the themes of like social justice and wealth disparity and oppression are really interesting. So I do like the themes. I like some of the new characters. I like where the story is going, but there's just like some things that are kind of taking my experience down a little bit. I've got like, 40-ish% left, so So I'll talk about this one more when I finish it and just kind of give final thoughts. And then I have to go soon, so I can't talk for too long. I have to cover the library barcode on this because I don't want to dox myself, but I'm also reading A Dangerous Collaboration by Deanna Raybourn, which I told you I was going to read. I'm only maybe a third. I'm really liking this one as well. I think that I'm getting really immersed. I realized I didn't give you much on the last update about this book, so I'm going to read some of the blurb. 3 years ago, Malcolm Romilly's bride vanished on their wedding day, and no trace of her has ever been found. Now those who were closest to her have gathered, each a possible suspect in her disappearance. From the poison garden kept by Malcolm's sister to the high towers of the family castle, the island's atmosphere is full of shadows, and danger lurks around every corner. Determined to discover Rosamund's fate, Veronica and Stoker match wits with a murderer who has already struck once and will not hesitate to kill again. So that's kind of the plot setup. Basically, we're on this like foggy, mysterious, I think it's a Scottish island. And then on this island, there is this castle, a beautiful castle, the way they describe it, with these bountiful gardens and a poison garden, as the blurb mentioned. And the setting of this is really, really good. I really like this compared to the last book. I don't know, they got me with this premise, with this setting. I think that these like mysterious island happenings are really interesting, and they're talking a lot about folk tales, about ghost stories and mermaids, and then there's this missing bride who maybe people have seen her ghost. And I'm really curious to see where this is going to go. In addition to the premise being interesting and the setting being interesting, where we're at with the character dynamics in this book, obviously I can't talk about it because we're on book 4. Veronica and Stoker are basically like a mystery-solving duo. They have lots of different adventures throughout these books, and Veronica is a lepidopterist, so she studies butterflies, and then Stoker is a taxidermist, so he taxidermies things. The dynamic between the two of them is so fun because they bicker constantly. They're always having some sort of a squabble, verbal sparring. When they spar, when they have these kinds of conversations, like it's never in a way that feels like they're trying to demean or degrade one another. It's really like they see each other as equals and they're trying to like jab each other all the time. I just really like their dynamic, and I think that where things are at in this book, I feel like we have to be hitting a turning point soon for the dynamic between the two of them. The series is marketed as a historical mystery romance, so likely you would assume that Veronica and Stoker are going to end up together, but I will say this is a slow burn, a glacial pace of slow. This is book 4 and they still are not together, so if you're not into a slow burn, this probably won't be for you. But even beyond the romance and the potential romance, I think that the mysteries in this series are really good, but I really just love watching their dynamic. I love watching them solve these mysteries and having them unravel these different plots that are happening. So right now they're kind of on like unstable ground, like they're kind of angry at each other for different reasons. So I can't wait to see when they're going to make peace and what they're going to do going forward. That's kind of all I can really talk about with A Dangerous Collaboration. All I can say is that I'm having a good time. This has potential. So I will probably come in with an update after the halfway point, I would say, when things start like really getting going. But that's all the time I got for now, and that's all the updates I have for now, so I will see you. Just gonna leave the sentence hanging there, I guess. I will see you soon. I have a fresh reading update. I finished Redemptor. I literally just finished it. I am in Katie Coulson's reading sprints right now. Hang on, I gotta show you this. Lotta, what are you doing? Hi, Bean. Okay, I'm not going to hold up the book because it was freaking my autofocus out. So I did like Redemptor, I still enjoyed it, but a lot of the issues I was having when I talked to you last time, like about the characters and the cast and how large it was, still persisted, and if anything, it just kind of got made more egregious by the end. One of the large themes of this is around relationships, love, acceptance, belonging, kind of found family. It's hard to get a whole picture of how the found family works and the dynamics of each character within that found family because they're so separate for most of the book. Even the characters that were introduced in the beginning of this that had like kind of their moment, their cameo, they didn't really come up again later. And if they did come up, it was like one sentence or a couple sentences. Some of the characters from the first book, like Kira and Sanji, they definitely make more of an appearance in this, but still, it's like, I think that was my largest issue with this, is there's just too many characters. And most of them are side characters that are just a name drop, and you really don't get any establishment of them as an individual or their personality or how they work into the dynamic. It's just that we might see them once or twice, but we don't really get to know them. And then the members of the family that we do get to meet and we get to see a little bit of, it's kind of just like a tease, or there's some characters that are introduced and then like never talked about again. Instead of solidifying and reinforcing those bonds from the first book, it just made it like spread way too thin. Aside from my issues with like the cast, there's something that happens in this that I was expecting to happen much sooner in the book, and it took like until the last 50 pages for it to happen. It got to the point where I was like, is there going to be another book? Because it kind of feels like they can't wrap it up in this time. But everything did get wrapped up, so I suppose it all worked out. But it was definitely a bit of a rush towards the end to kind of wrap up all of those things that needed to happen. I feel like a lot of the book in the middle was just meandering a little bit, and I think we could have tightened that up and given more time to that last big thing that happened. Obviously, it's hard to talk about this without spoilers, but I try to keep all of my reading vlogs and such as spoiler-free as I can, and my wrap-ups too. I try to keep everything spoiler-free. I don't like to be the one to like spoil things for people. The takeaways are, I still really like this duology a lot. I think Raybearer is fantastic. It's so solid, and Redemptor was a great kind of way to finish the series. I'm really happy that I finished the duology, and there is another book, but it's in the same universe. It's called The Maid and the Crocodile, and I do want to read that because Jordan Ifuego's writing is so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. It's just so evocative and so lyrical. But so that's Redemptor, which means one of my sequels checked off the list, and actually I have another one to check off the list. So let's talk about A Dangerous Collaboration. I don't have my library copy anymore, so I'll put the photo over there. To remind you, this was the 4th book in the Veronica Speedwell series, and I think I had told you that it was on this island with a castle. There was some folklore elements going on, mermaids and such. It ended up being a pretty fun mystery. I think I did enjoy seeing how everything kind of unraveled. The pacing in the last half was a little bit slower. The second half, it started to lull just a little bit. I feel like not a whole lot was happening. We were still getting a lot of information and talking to people, trying to unravel secrets and find out what was really going on. I will say the reveal ended up not being what I expected, and I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I didn't really see it coming, so that's always a good feeling. Something happened at the end of the book that I am so hyped for. I'm so excited. I think we were talking about the slow burn of it all with Veronica and Stoker, and how we were on the 4th book with not a crumb. Well, we had some crumbs. She was really starving us, you know, and I got a nice morsel in there that I'm really happy with. So I'm looking forward to the next book. The premise of the 5th book sounds really interesting, and I already picked it up. I'm going to be doing a buddy read of it with Elise from Elise's Reading. I think the 5th one has something to do with a high-class brothel and is it art or jewelry theft? I might be mixing up my plots. I just added like a bunch of the Deanna Raybourn, Veronica Speedwell books to my Notion database, so I'm kind of getting all the premises mixed up. I'm looking forward to it, so that'll not be in this video, but I will talk about that probably in February. I think I'm gonna read it in February. But yeah, so that is 2. I'm happy that I knocked those 2 out. I will say I'm a bit nervous about the next 2 because I know that the Obelisk Gate is going to be really intense. It's the sequel to the 5th season. I know it's going to be tough getting back into that world just because it's so dense. There's so much world building. And I did read the 5th season like relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, but I still feel like underprepared for it, you know what I mean? And then A Drop of Corruption, I'm a little bit more nervous about, just because it's been so long since I read The Tainted Cup. We shall see. I've heard that people like it even more than The Tainted Cup, so I'm hoping that it'll be good. But yeah, that's the updates. So I will see you whenever I see you. Hi, sorry for this weird angle. We are in the car. I am outside of the shelter and I'm about to go in and volunteer with the kitties. I started The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, which is the 2nd book in the Broken Earth series, and I'm liking it so far. However, I do not know what the fuck is going on. I feel like it's been not that long since I read the 5th season where I can still remember like characters' names and what's happening kind of and what happened at the end of the 5th season, but just long enough that I have lost a lot of the lesser details where exactly things left off on different plot lines throughout the story. I'm having a hard time getting back into the series just because sometimes with sequels, one thing that gets kind of under my skin is when an author handholds you way too hard and tries to like feed you what happened in the last book or what characters were doing and who's this character. They don't trust you to kind of remember what you read in the last book. However, I think this one is like the polar opposite of that. She's not hand-holding you at all with getting back into this book and into this series. It's basically like, if you don't remember, well, bitch, you better try, because I'm not going to be wasting any time telling you what you just read in the first book. Like, we got too much ground to cover. We're not slowing down to do that. And I do appreciate her letting us remember on our own, and also being like, hang on a second, like, where have I heard this name before? Where have I seen this thing happen before? So part of that is just on me for not reading the second book right away after finishing the first book. I'm enjoying it, but I also just feel like, gosh, there's so much I don't remember. I'm just trying to remember everything that happened in the last book, especially because there's so many different POVs in the first book, and there's so many intricacies of the plot. I might need to look up a summary of what happened. So I actually even looked at my reading notes that I took when I read the first book. I looked at my reading notes that I took on my tracker. I swear, when I read the 5th season, I read it on like Hoopla or Libby, and I annotated it. I highlighted passages, and I know for a fucking fact that I did highlight things. But I tried to go find my highlights, and I cannot find them anywhere. I looked on my reading tracker, I tagged that I read it on Libby. I was like, okay, well, Libby doesn't delete your highlights, and Kindle Web doesn't delete your highlights. So I went on there, and I was trying to find them, and I cannot find them. And I think what might have happened is I might have deleted the book itself from my Kindle library, from my Amazon content library. And if I did that, it probably deletes the highlights too, because I borrowed the book again and it wasn't there. I don't know why I did that. If I did do that, I should not have done that. But I do not have my highlights from reading the 5th season the first time. All I have is my reading notes. And the notes definitely helped a bit, because I kind of explained each character and some of the major plot points that were happening, but I wish that I had those highlights. I really do. Especially for some of the world building things that we need to remember for this book. Let that be a lesson. If you read a book digitally and you highlight things, make sure it backs up somewhere, or transfer that shit somewhere that you can save the notes, because I do not have those anymore. But yeah, so I think that's everything update-wise. I'm pretty sure that's all of it. So I'll see you guys in the next update. I'm gonna get some kitty time. Bye. Okay, hi. So we are on the floor again. I just got home from work, so I'm still in my scrubs. So I have continued the Obelisk Gate, and I am about halfway into it, and I feel like I still have no idea what the fuck is going on. So far of N.K. Jemison's work, I've only read the 5th season in the Obelisk Gate, and I just cannot fathom how her mind works and how she writes everything that she writes. So I haven't really figured out a way to talk about what is happening in this book. But basically, the climate crisis situation that started in the first book, granted, it's always kind of been happening in this universe. This whole series is basically climate crisis, dystopian, natural disasters abound kind of thing. What kicked off in the last book has continued into this book, and we're kind of getting more background on certain characters. We're also going back in time a little bit to see what's happened with other characters 10 years before the present timeline. I think it's the present timeline. The reason why I say I think it's the present timeline is because Jemison does this thing where she jumps around a lot all over the place, and you're trying to piece together, this happened at this time and this happened at this time, and it doesn't like spell it out for you. So you kind of just have to interpret how long it's been since something has happened, or this takes place around the same time as this other event happened. It's a little bit overwhelming at times, I will say, but I'm having a good time with it. I'm, like I said, around the halfway point, and there's definitely been some things happening that I don't really know where it's gonna go. There's kind of this elaboration on the magic system in this that's happening, where we're kind of seeing this other side of orogeny, or maybe a different way of using orogeny, which is the like geothermal earth magic, I suppose. We're kind of seeing this other side to orogeny that maybe people weren't aware of before, or they were straight up forbidden from performing this kind of orogeny because the people in power were trying to limit what origins could do, because I think they were mostly just scared of the potential. And so we're kind of seeing a lot of things that were kept secret and are being revealed. There's a couple different POVs. There's actually 3 different POVs. I say POV, but really it's more that we're just following different characters, and the narrator is kind of like a second person or third person omniscient kind of situation. Yeah, the perspectives, the way that Jemison experiments with different perspectives and experiments with narration styles throughout this series is so interesting. It's so confusing. It's very unique. I've never really read anything that reads like the 5th season books do. So far, I'm really enjoying my time with it. I don't really know how I'm feeling about like the specifics of what's happening, but I'm intrigued enough that I want to keep reading, and I want to see where this is going to go, especially with some of the kind of things that have been teased, but we haven't been explicitly shown yet. So that's the update on the Obelisk Gate. I still have not started A Drop of Corruption. It's just been sitting here on my TBR shelf. If we get around to this one, wonderful. If we don't, we don't. That's okay. I just feel bad because this has been on my TBR I've had this for so long. It smells good.
Squidward.
You know, it's been sitting on my shelf for a while, but it still smells really new. I feel like Allie from All I Do Is Read, just like huffing my books over here. So yeah, that's the reading update. But so I will see you in a little bit, hopefully, whenever I get around to it. So we are in the bathroom again because I am getting ready for work currently. So I was planning to hold up the book and like show you guys at this point that I have finished the Obelisk Gate. I'll put a photo on the side with all my annotations in it because I tabbed the hell out of this book. So yeah, long story short, there is a ton that I needed to keep track of because I don't know how long it'll be until I pick up the next one. And I really wanted to have my annotations to revisit for whenever I pick that up. So basically, my feelings about the Obelisk Gate are really positive. I really enjoyed it. I'm actually like not sure how much plot actually happens in this one. Obviously there is a plot that kind of goes throughout the story, but this one is largely focused on a different character actually than the first books. We get to spend a lot of time with that character and kind of see things from their point of view, what happened to them during the time of the first book, like things that happened off page in the first book. So I did like getting to see that character's POV because it added a lot more context to the relationship dynamics that were talked about. I also just really like that this character who was only talked about but never shown in book one got like their page time in this one because it makes you care a lot more about why the characters are doing what they're doing. I know I'm being really vague, but this series has so much to do with the characters in it, and especially like the things that are revealed in book one. I just don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything. So I'm just being intentionally vague. But the moral of the story is I really did enjoy the Obelisk Gate. I didn't like it as much as the 5th season, but I still really, really liked it. It's not like a casual read by any means because there's so much remembering that you have to do from the first book. And there's a lot of keeping track of different things. But like, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not really a casual, like fun, tiki read, you know? I am happy with the fact that I finally read it because I've been putting off that series for a little bit. Yeah, I will see you whenever. Goodbye. Hey, we are on the floor. I'm doing laundry. I hope you can't hear the laundry machine, but it eventually is going to sound like a spaceship is taking off inside of this house. So I'm gonna have to talk quick. So I haven't filmed anything for this video in a little bit since I finished the last book that I did. And partly it is because I have just felt absolutely no motivation to pick up this book, A Drop of Corruption. I keep thinking about it. I keep thinking, oh, this is the next thing I need to read. I need to pick this up for the video. I really need to get around to it. Well, you are so lopsided. I don't think I fixed anything by adjusting the tripod, but you were kind of crooked. I fixed it, I think, because I feel bad for not finishing the series, or I feel bad because people love this and I'm like, oh, well, I already own it. I bought a UK copy and everything. I should read it. I don't really want to read it. I don't really want to read it. And I keep thinking to myself, if the only reason that I'm going to be reading something is because I feel like I should, or I feel like I need to for a video or for completing a series or whatever, I probably don't need to read it. So it just feels like a waste to buy something and then not read it. I think I just need to be much more selective when I'm buying sequels to books in a series, because if I really, really loved the first book or really enjoyed it but didn't give it a 5-star or whatever, then I should buy the second one and I should read it very soon after reading the first one, because part of the issue is I read A Tainted Cup a long time ago. But in the case of a series that I didn't enjoy as much, like I gave it maybe 3 stars, 3.5 stars for the first book, I don't need to continue the the series if I don't want to. And I've been good about that for the most part, not continuing series if I just don't really have an interest in them. I've DNF'd plenty of series. I can still enjoy a first book in a series and not continue the series. Basically, I'm saying it shouldn't feel like an obligation to continue a series if I'm not actually feeling it. I mean, same thing earlier in this video with Sunbringer. I wasn't really feeling Sunbringer. I didn't even like Godkiller that much. I think I gave it like a 3.5. I don't need to continue it if I don't like it that much, or I don't really feel like fully committed to like picking up the sequel. I don't have to. So I guess part of this video is just telling myself it's okay to not continue series if you're not really sure about them, and also don't force yourself to read something if you don't think you're gonna like it that much, or if you're just not feeling it. And it's not even like, oh, I'm just not in the mood right now. I haven't been in the mood for months to read this, hence why it's been on my TBR for so long. Yeah, I think I'm going to let this one go, take it off my TBR. I'm probably gonna sell it on Pango because, like I said, it is the UK edition and it's a hardcover, which means I bought it when it came out in the UK, like right after it came out. Usually what they do in the UK with hardcovers is they do like a limited run of hardcovers for like 6 months or something after the book is published, and then they just do paperback. So like I said, I bought this really soon after it came out. That's why I have a hardcover of it. And it's a bummer because like it is so gorgeous, but the Tainted Cup that I have the UK hardcover as well is also beautiful, and I'm still keeping that one. So we're good. So I think I will throw this on Pango. I'm sure someone will be really, really happy to find a UK hardcover of it. I paid some of my hard-earned, real-life money for a book from a different country that I'm not reading. So I'm gonna put her down now. But that is really the final thing I wanted to do for this video. I am just happy that I read 3 of the things I said I was gonna read. I think 3 out of 4 is pretty good. And honestly, this video was mostly a success in terms of my enjoyment of the sequels that I picked up. Overall, I'm happy that I read all of the ones that I did. I'm kind of off-screen continuing this forcing myself to read sequels thing because I picked up A Murderous Relation, which is the sequel to A Dangerous Collaboration, which is the 4th book in the Murderbot. I almost said Murderbot series. It's the 5th book. Hang on. A Murderous Relation is the 5th book in the Veronica Speedwell. I read the 4th book in this video. So I'm kind of picking up the sequels faster because of that, but also because I'm doing a buddy read. So I'm still gonna try to hold myself to picking up sequels much quicker than I have been, just because I can't wait too long, which I need to pick up The Stone Sky soon and read this one because I read The Obelisk Gate in this video, and I need to make sure that I read this one before all of that information just evaporates from my brain. I hopefully will get around to reading this one maybe March, maybe April. Definitely not in like 6 months. And if you don't see this book in one of my monthly wrap-ups within the next like couple months, feel free to yell at me in the comments. Be like, why are you not reading The Stone Sky? You said you were going to. You're gonna forget everything. You're right. I probably will forget everything. Feel free to be on my case about reading that book because I really do need to make sure that I am good about continuing my series in a timely manner. So overall, lessons were learned, sequels were read. So thank you so much for being here for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing. Like I said, it means a lot to me that you're here. And if you want to comment something, but you don't know what to say, oh no, the house is taking off now. The laundry is doing its spin now, so I need to wrap this up. But if you want to comment down below and you don't know what to say, fuck it, drop me like a washing machine or some kind of laundry related emoji, just because I'm doing laundry. That's the only reason. If people are reading the comment section like before they finish the video, I want them to be really confused. So yeah, that's everything for this video. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.